Hello there. In this video I'm going to show you how to build this generative patch using the QVL. The analog routing side of our patch is very simple. We've got a sawtooth oscillator into a low-pass filter and then a VCA and then out through some effects. If I turn the effects off, we've got some plucky sounds. We can change the sustain time and the release time. We can change the overall density of the patch. We can add some modulation to pitch. We can go for a ring modulation type sound, or we can go for more of a vibrato sound, or more of swoopy sounds. And we can control the overall pitch range. So the QVL is generating out of output number 1 an envelope to control the VCA. Output number 3 is an envelope to control the filter. Output 2 is basically a clock signal, a square wave LFO. And then output 4 is our pitch output. And I've set up custom parameters on the performance page to make it easy to control. So we're going to start by loading an empty preset. So now we've just got some sine wave outputs, and the output of the patch is not very interesting at all. I'm going to start by setting up a clock source using LFO2. We're going to set it to a square wave, and we're going to shorten the pulse width and bring the rate down to about 1 every second. And this is going to be our clock source. And notice that I've patched output of LFO2 into gate 1. And I'm going to go into envelope A settings and set it to be triggered from gate 1. Now I'm going to go back to the envelope and make sure it's attack sustain release with a log slope, a fairly short attack, and a moderate release. And then on output 1, I'm going to set the output to be envelope A. And also on output 3, I'm going to set it to be envelope A. So now the output's a little more interesting, but the pitch is kind of out of control. So let's set up our pitch output. That's going to be LFO4. I'm going to choose a sample and hold. And to make sure it's integrated with the patch in terms of timing, I'm going to set external range mode, and the trigger will be gate 1. And then for the source, we're going to use LFO1. This is the source that will be sampled every time gate 1 is triggered. And LFO1 is a sine wave, so it's pretty wide range. We're going to set the output of LFO4 to be much narrower and use the offset, set a more useful range. In fact, we can set the level to 0 and then use the offset to set our rough tuning. We of course could adjust it on the oscillator itself in terms of fine tuning, but I'm not worried about that right now. Let's set the shape of the sample and hold to 0. So we just get solid lines with no slewing. Okay, so now I'd like to set up some modulation on LFO2, so it's a more interesting source. I'm going to go over to LFO1. I'm going to change it to be a Lorenz attractor. And I'm going to slow it down to around just under a hertz, so it gives us an interesting variation of values. And then LFO2 on the modulation page, I'm going to set the source as LFO1. And set the destination as rate 2, which would be the rate of LFO2. Yep. Let's turn the amount way down. And then LFO2 if we speed it up. Okay, I want to adjust the rate of LFO1 to be a bit faster so we get a wider range of values. Notice that we adjust the pulse width of LFO2, we're adjusting the sustain length of the notes. So that's a very useful parameter. I'll have to map that to the performance page in a bit. Okay, so to make the pitch output a little more interesting, let's set up LFO3 as a vibrato. I'm going to increase the rate a little bit so we can hear better when I set up modulation. And then for LFO4, which is what we want to modulate, because that's going to our oscillator, I'm going to set the source to be LFO3, and the destination to be level 4, which would be the output level. Bring the amount down so it doesn't get crazy. Okay, so we've got our pitch modulation set up. Okay, so let's set up the parameters on the performance page so they are more useful. The first thing I want to put on there is the release of envelope A. So we go into Custom A and set release. I also want to set the rate of LFO2. That's rate 2, and then the shape of LFO2. So now I can control the density. So slower is less dense, faster is more dense. And then of course the release time. And the sustain time. So I get nice plucky noises. Okay, so for the B side, well, we definitely want control over, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. So on the B side, we definitely want control over the rate of LFO3, and also over the amount of modulation, which is going to be mod 3. And then for the last parameter, I want to control the level of the sample and hold. There we go. So that gives us our pitch range. So I can turn level all the way down, turn the modulation all the way down, and I've got constant pitch, add a little bit of modulation. So now we've got a ring mod effect, increasing the level, steadily increases the pitch range. Just the sustain level, releases, and then there's a few more things you can fine tune, of course, such as the modulation on the rate, the amount of modulation, as well as the rate of the Lorenzo tractor, which is modulating the clock source on LFO2, but also is the source of values to be sampled on LFO4. And of course we could choose a different modulation waveform. Square wave would be an interesting option. Just basically a way to add more pitch variations. Anyway, add a little delay. And we have a fun little generative patch.